All right, here we are. It is Monday, and the Mets are back in action, looking to bounce back from their season opening series loss to the Houston Astros as they kick things off with the Miami Marlins down at Lone Depot Park in South Beach. So hopefully the Mets are going to be able to correct course from what we saw in Houston this past weekend. They did end up getting at least one of those games, thankfully. I mean, it wasn't exactly a riveting performance from the offense. That was very frustrating, but a get-right spot for them as they take on the Marlins coming off a 100-loss season in 2024. So we are going to talk about the series this week and break down tonight's pitching matchup between David Peterson and Cal Quantrill. But first, some news, of course, many of you probably already know, but if you don't by now, Francisco Lindor not in tonight's lineup. That is because Lindor and his wife, Katya, giving birth to their son within the last 24 hours. So no Francisco Lindor tonight. He was not, however, put on paternity leave. He is still with the team in Miami. Carlos Mendoza said that he would be available to play tonight. So very good chance that we will end up seeing him in the starting lineup in the next two games down there in Miami before they head home for their home opener against the Blue Jays beginning on Friday. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to it. The Mets have a great chance in front of them, like I said, to get right against the Marlins coming off that horrendous 2024 season. 100 losses, and they don't spend a dollar in free agency this past offseason. I mean, just unimaginable. They don't even really have like any idea of a rebuild going on right now either. I mean, they're just completely in no man's land. This lineup that they're throwing out there tonight, I recognize one, maybe two of the names. We're going to get to that later on. But tonight's matchup, it is David Peterson versus Cal Quantrill. So let's begin with David Peterson. His career numbers versus the Miami Marlins: in 8 starts and 1 relief appearance, he is 4-2 and a 2.80 ERA. It's actually one of the better earned run averages that David Peterson has against any of his opponents in Major League Baseball with a substantial sample size. So that's a good note. Specifically, he's been great at Lone Depot Park down there in Miami, a 3.48 ERA in 4 career starts on the road against the Marlins. So love to see that. Last year, Peterson had 2 starts against the Marlins and won both of them. He was not exactly on his A game, though. Luckily, the bats were able to help out. Hopefully, something they'll be able to do tonight and throughout the rest of this series. Last June, he had 4 earned runs on 8 hits and 2 walks in just 5 innings pitched. That was at Citi Field. And then in July, a little bit better, 2 earned runs on 6 hits and 4 walks over 5 innings. The big things that jump out to me about those 2 starts are the walks. We know that's something that Peterson needs to get better about and has definitely done so within the last calendar year and even going in spring training this year. And it's a big key for him throughout this entire season. So hopefully he'll be able to limit the free passes. That's always going to be a key for me with any starting pitcher. Taking a look at the Marlins starting lineup tonight, not exactly a who's who or murderer's row for that matter. Leading off is Xavier Edwards. We know him. He's an electric up-and-coming star for the Marlins. We saw him last year with the team, and he did some really nice things for them on the field. He's leading off. Career against David Peterson, he is 1 for 3 with 2 walks in 5 plate appearances. After that, you have Otto Lopez, who is 1 for 6 in his career against David Peterson. The next 3 guys have never faced the Mets, David Peterson, and that is Eric Wagaman, Derek Hill, Jonah Bride. Those are your 3, 4, 5 hitters for the Miami Marlins, who again did not spend a dollar this entire offseason. So it makes sense why this is the lineup that they're rolling out here tonight. After Jonah Bride in the 5 hole, you have Dane Myers hitting 7th. He's 1 for 2, including a double against Peterson. And then the rest of the lineup after that, the bottom 3, Liam Hicks, Javier Sonoja, and Graham Pauley. None of them have ever faced David Peterson. So key for me, like I was saying about David Peterson having a successful start tonight against the Marlins, throw strikes. I mean, just throw strikes. And he's been doing a great job of that over the last calendar year. Like I said, definitely seems like that hip surgery has unlocked his mechanics and he's feeling more comfortable on the mound. I'm expecting big things out of Peterson. If you've caught any of my previous videos, I believe he's going to be the ace of this rotation and have a top 10 starters ERA in the National League by the end of the year. So high hopes for me in the Mets southpaw, but it all starts with having control and command and limiting the free passes. That's been his bugaboo for his entire career. Hopefully he is heading in that right direction, and especially tonight against an very inexperienced Marlins lineup. Don't let these guys get anything for free. They're going to have to pay for it if they want to get on base, if they want to drive in runs, make them hit the ball, attack the strike zone. Hopefully Peterson has his good stuff tonight. And then going up against him on the other side, his counterpart is Cal Quantrill. So Quantrill is entering his first year with the Marlins after spending the first 6 seasons of his career with San Diego, Cleveland, and with Colorado. He has a career .407 ERA, over 123 starts, and about 40 relief appearances during that time. He has 2 career starts versus the Mets, a 4.50 ERA and 5 earned runs in 10 innings pitched against the team. But they weren't very recent. In fact, the most recent start that Quantrill had against the Mets came in 2023 while a member of the Guardians. He gave up 3 earned runs on 6 hits over 5 2/3 innings pitched. And then before that, his next most recent start actually was only the second of his career when he was coming up with the San Diego Padres. That was way back in April of 2019, where he gave up 2 earned runs in 4 innings. Really not relevant because the only 2 members of tonight's lineup that are still on this roster for the Mets are Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo. So we won't go too deeply into that. But overall, a grand opportunity for the Mets, for David Peterson to have a quality start against, like I said, a very inexperienced Marlins lineup. Even if there is some talent that they're hoping to develop out of it, this is only their second series for a lot of these guys. A lot of them are rookies, and a lot of them aren't really high-end prospect kind of guys. So there's no reason Peterson shouldn't go out and have a great start. Meanwhile, taking a look at today's Mets lineup, facing off against Quantrill. A little bit different, like I said, no Francisco Lindor. He's not on paternity leave, but he is not getting the start tonight. So that means a different leadoff hitter, and that means Starling Marte. Marte against Quantrill for his career is 1 for 8, including 2 walks in 10 plate appearances. Juan Soto in his typical number 2 spot, but surprisingly actually has not ever faced off against Quantrill, which is a little surprising considering the time that he spent with Cleveland. I guess they just never matched up in the same leagues often enough to face each other. So Juan Soto, no plate appearances versus Quantrill. Pete Alonso is 1 for 6 in his career against him. Brandon Nimmo hitless in 5 at-bats with a walk. Mark Vientos 0 for 3 against Quantrill. Luis Torrens hitting 6th. Don't know how I feel about that, to be honest, but you know what? He's got no plate appearances against Quantrill, and he's been hitting better than the guy behind him, and that's Brett Baty. Baty getting the start at second. He's 2 for 3 and actually probably has the best numbers against that's a hard name to say, Cal Quantrill. 2 for 3, a double, and a home run, those coming in 2023, his last start against the Mets. And then following him is Luis Angel Acuna, who will be playing shortstop today in place of Francisco Lindor. He has never faced Quantrill. And then Jose Siri rounds out the lineup in the 9th spot. He is 2 for 2 with a double against him. Keys for the Mets lineup tonight against him. They got to get into good counts, okay? They need to find a way to get on base. They need to find a way to move runners over. But most importantly, they need to start getting some hits. I mean, 1 hit the other night against the Astros in the series finale. Now, I know a lot of the Mets outs were some of the hardest hit balls in the game, including Mark Vientos' line out to Jeremy Pena to end that one. So they hit into a little bit of bad luck. The BABIP gods were against the Mets in Houston. I'm telling you, there's some parts where it just feels like there is a voodoo hex on your team, and that certainly felt that way at Daikin Park, Minute Maid Park, whatever they're calling it nowadays. It didn't feel like the energy was very good there for the orange and blue, at least the Mets orange and blue color scheme, not the Astros. Anyway, get on base, get in good counts, hit the ball. I mean, it's simple stuff. When you have such a bad series the way the Mets offense did against Houston, it's very simple. Just get some base hits, just score some runs. And to me, it starts with working good counts and getting on base. And then the last thing that I'd love to see take advantage of this speed at the bottom of the order. It is blazing fast with Luis Angel Acuna hitting 8th, with Jose Siri right behind him. We got a good example, as you can see on the screen right over here, of him stealing home basically on that play, manufacturing a run out of nothing against the Astros on Saturday night. And then you have Starling Marte back at the top of the order. So an order of Acuna, Siri, and Marte. I want to see the Mets on base, and I want to see them on base often and taking extra bases and stealing them to put themselves into a good position to start driving in some runs. That was one of the biggest disappointments of that series in Houston. The Mets were just 2 for 21 with runners in scoring position against the Astros, and they were 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position and 2 outs. Those are the kind of things that you need to start getting right, especially against a bottom feeder like the Miami Marlins. So hopefully that will be the case. That is our preview for tonight's game. David Peterson, Cal Quaintrell. Let's go over to game 2. As you can see, I have on the graphic right over here. Yeah, here. Game 2, we will see the debut of Kodai Senga and the return of Sandy Alcantara. So let's begin with Senga. He's actually thrown the most career starts and innings against the Marlins than any other opponent in Major League Baseball for his career. In fact, Lone Depot Park was the site of his first career start back in 2023. So he is 3-0 in 4 starts with a 2.42 ERA against the Marlins over 22 1/3 innings pitched. And his numbers are even better down there in South Beach. His ERA drops down to 2.20 in 2 starts against the Fish. So definitely a good omen there for Kodai Senga. Now, don't forget, he's going to be on a pitch count to open this season. Mets brass said that they're going to be monitoring him closely. He didn't get a ton of work in Grapefruit League during spring training, and their plan, at least for his first few starts, is to have him throw about 75 pitches before hopefully ramping him up to the normal 90 to 100 pitches that a starting pitcher will typically go for. So that's something to keep an eye on. Walks are obviously going to be key. If he starts walking batters or getting into deep counts, it's obviously going to shorten the length of his start and make the Mets more dependent on their bullpen, which may not be such a bad thing considering how well they performed against the Astros this past weekend. And then opposing him, of course, the 2022 Cy Young winner, Sandy Alcantara, who made his return from Tommy John surgery, his first start of the season on opening day against the Pirates, went 4 2/3 innings, allowed just 2 runs with 7 strikeouts against Pittsburgh. Has a ton of experience against the Mets. He is very familiar with us as we are with him. 15 career starts against the Orange and Blue. He has a 307 earned run average. His most recent start came in that Cy Young year of 2022 when he faced off against us 4 different times, and the numbers were up and down. A couple starts where he went 7 shutout, and then a few where he went 5 innings, 6 innings, but allowed 3 or 4 runs. So the Mets have definitely gotten to him before, but he's also had our number in the past as well. The question is, which version of Sandy Alcantara will the Mets be getting? You know, this is a guy who is coming off injury, so is there a pitch count for him? Are they keeping a really close eye on him? And does he have his normal Cy Young type stuff? So hopefully the Mets will be able to deliver against him, but definitely a tough one, no doubt about it. And then game 3, as you can see, maybe in this very minuscule little box down here, I'll expand that, make it a little bit bigger next time, and maybe get rid of our little video up here. Game 3, Clay Holmes versus Connor Gillespie. No, not that Connor Gillespie. Not the Connor Gillespie that broke our hearts in 2016 with the game-winning home run in the 2016 wild card for the San Francisco Giants. Luckily, no, it's not him. It's instead a starting pitcher. Let's get into it, though, as far as Clay Holmes. He has only numbers really against the Marlins as a reliever from his time with the Yankees and then all the way back in 2019 when he was a member of the Pirates. So they're not exactly relevant or worth getting too deep into. I'll just say this. I thought Holmes looked pretty good in his start against Houston. Unfortunately, walks hurt him and he was leaving his fastball up and didn't have great command of his sinker, which we know is his favorite pitch, his out pitch, and one that gets him a lot of ground ball. So I'm hoping for a big bounce back start from Clay Holmes, and I'm expecting it. I thought overall, though, the stuff looked pretty good. he's going to be adjusting to getting back to becoming a starting pitcher just because he did it a couple times through spring training. It's just a totally different beast now. He himself said that in his post-game interview after Thursday against the Astros, but I'm expecting a nice start from Clay Holmes in Game 3 of this series on Wednesday. And then Connor Gillespie, again, not the third baseman from the Giants a couple years ago. Instead, this is his second career start, and he was roughed up in his first one for 4 runs in 5 innings against Pittsburgh. So here's the bottom line for this series. The Mets offense has to be better. Okay, we get 1 hit on Saturday, and then on Friday, even when the Mets won the game 3-1, they left many men on base, many men in scoring position, and failed to capitalize on multiple opportunities. And the same could be said for their opening day loss on Thursday. With the bases loaded, they only cash in 1 on the Francisco Lindor sac fly, and that's without mentioning the many other innings where they left men on base and weren't able to score runs. We need everybody to get in. Okay! This is a Marlins team that should lose 100 games again this year, and a Marlins team that the Mets should sweep. And that's asking for a lot. I understand that. But 2 out of 3 may just not be enough. It depends how they look, but you want to see them get off to this good start to begin the year. That first series in Houston, okay, look, they drew some really tough matchups with Framber Valdez and with Spencer Arrighetti, who looked pretty good, and Hunter Green. I mean, it is what it is. But now you're on the road, new series against the Marlins. Again, a team that's going to be in dead last pretty much the entire season. The Mets should easily win 2 out of 3, if not sweep, because going back to Citi Field 2-4 to open their season, or at least their home season, is not going to be very pretty, considering the amount of money that Steve Cohen invested into this team this offseason. So hopefully you caught some of that. Sorry, Mookie's a bit of a naughty boy sometimes and gets a little barky there, but let's hope that the Mets do bounce back now here and can at least win 2 out of 3. If not, go for the jugular, get that sweep of Miami heading into their home slate on Friday against the Toronto Blue Jays. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and keep things going. We're trying to get to our goal of 2,000 before the end of April. I appreciate it very much, and we'll check back in with you guys later on this week. Let's go, Mets.